And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Linda Deir, who had angels and spirit guides follow her back after her near-death experience. Linda, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. I'm real excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. Let's start on the day that this happened and go from there.
Yeah, I was 20 months old. My my mother, I ran away from home at 20 months old because my mom, every day, same thing would happen. She would wake up and the screaming would start, then the beatings would start. And I was at 20 months old, I had it. I was fed up. So I saw my dog push on the gate and it would pop open. So I said, okay, I'm going to go out there and push on that gate. And it did pop open. And it with barefoot and diaper, with a little baby snap-on shirt, I took off. And I got on the expressway, on the median of the expressway, and I was sure I was going in the direction to find my dad. I thought he could save me from her. And I was on a beeline just to find my dad. And the Sacramento police officers, this was 1954, they saw me and they picked me up and they said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I'm going to find my daddy because something's wrong with my mommy." And they said, "Where do you live?" And I wasn't going back there, so I wouldn't tell them. So they took me to the candy store and bribed me with candy and broke my will, okay? And I didn't know what the names of the streets were, but I knew how to point myself back to my house, and they took me back home. And my mom answers the door and she's shocked. And she puts on this act like, "Oh, thank you for bringing her back," and everything. So, and these were in 1954, there was no child protective services. That didn't really come about until the 70s, which is crazy. But once they figured, it's a family matter, I was in good hands. My mom put on a good show. They left. My mom took me inside and beat me unconscious. And not just unconscious, but I was gone. I went right back to where I was before 20 months before that moment, before I got here. And thank God I was gone from here. It was like I was going to be okay. I was safe now. And then I woke up in a puddle of water and I was drenched. So I have to assume that my mom threw a bucket of water on me or something and shocked me back into this life, pulled me right back. And then I was desperate. I didn't know what I was going to do. The fear was paralyzing. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I did the only thing I knew. I asked out loud for someone to help me. And when I did that, I've got to show this to you on the front of my book. They, they showed up all around me. And they just stood there. They were about 7 feet tall, all lit up, just looking at me, not worried about me at all, as they telepathically communicated with me, which was it's the universal language, telepathy. It's where we come from before we get here, before we're born into this world. I understood everything they were telling me. I remembered what they were showing me. And what they said to me, they said several things. They said many things. But my takeaway that day was this life is not all there is. Knowing that one thing removed any fear I had going forward for the rest of my life. Nothing has ever, ever put me into fear like that moment did ever again. After knowing that, Jeff, in a soul way, not just, an intellectual way, I understood it. Okay. They told me life would get better for me as I got older if I could make it through childhood. So I mean, what I latched onto when they told me that is life will get better for me as I get older. The part about the childhood, I kind of went like this, like, I can't really hear that because I'm in my childhood, right? I kind of had to push that away, looking at the best part of what they told me, like this will get better, okay? So they told me that. They told me that the biggest tragedy in our lifetimes is that most people will die having lived fear-based lives. They told me so many things in that they told me things that to this day keep coming back, like memories that keep coming back from that moment. But I walked away with enough of it where I knew I was going to be more than okay. And never again could she, no matter what she did to me, could I ever indulge in that much fear ever again. So it changed the trajectory of my life. I really won't know what it would have been like because I was so young when this happened that it was just it was my new baseline. So moving on from that, I recovered from that. And but the abuse didn't stop, it continued to go on. And I just handled it better. What I did is at 7 years old, this is a little fast forward here. At 7 years old, I started writing in my journal about what was going on because I was having this communication with these guides, with these light beings, while I was living in this density, this 3D world with all this dysfunction in my family. And I never hated my mom. I want everyone to know. I don't know why I never hated her. I mean, anybody else probably would have, but I never did. It's like it's like I couldn't hate her, you know? I knew something was wrong with her and she wasn't getting the help she needed. That's what I really knew in my heart, because this is my mom. You love your mom, you know? So I at 7 years old, I started writing in my journal about what was going on, the communication I was receiving, the world I was living in, how to bring this together, how to make sense of it. And it's literally saved my life. I know it did.
Do you have any other memories of what the other side looked like or what you saw over there?
Well, I'll tell you what I had. This is different than anything I've ever heard anyone talk about. I had a near-death experience in reverse. What happened is I wound up on the other side when my mom almost when I did die, I know I did. And then she threw that bucket of cold water on me and wham, I slammed back into this life. Um, they followed me back here and we had this conversation, okay? And they followed me back here ever since. Whenever I've needed to understand something or know something or something happened or something good, something bad, whatever it happened to be, they were always here. I didn't have to go there, go back there, die again, or have some trauma that blew me out of this life, that let me experience that again. They always came to me. So I call it a near death or an near death experiences where it's in reverse, where they come to me. And what this happened when this happened, I'll add this one other thing. When this happened when I was 20 months old, they from that experience, I had out of body experiences one after the other all the time, all the time. I could do it on command. It was the easiest thing for me to do. I could go out of my body. I could go anywhere. I could float around the house. I could watch what they were all doing. They'd see me sitting in a chair and it looked like I was there, which I was. My body was there, but I wasn't in it. So I had ways to escape this reality, if you want to call this a reality. This has never been and another thing about these out of body experiences, which is very close to near death experiences, they're the same feeling, is I learned what I learned from doing those and having those experiences is so profound. I learned not to get overly attached in this world. I learned how to live in two worlds at the same time. I learned how to bring this together. Now, where this really pays off, and as I fast forward through this, at 16 years old, I mean, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to get out of that family. I got pregnant on purpose. I did it on purpose. I had to get out of there. I couldn't take another minute of it. And I wasn't afraid. I mean, I was still in high school. I mean, but I wasn't afraid. I've never been fearful, not after that 20-month-old incident. So I wasn't afraid. And when I got out of the house that first night, I married my high school boyfriend. The first night, this is amazing. The first night I got out of the house, I no longer wet the bed. I wet the bed until I was 16 years old. I couldn't stop doing it. And I have a will that's incredible. I set the alarm every hour. I'd still have the problem. In fact, when my mom said to me, she said, did you tell him about your problem before I left? Out of my mouth comes, I don't have that problem anymore. I don't know where that came from, but it was true. Never happened again. That was really an opener for me, Jeff, to be out of that situation like that. It turns out that, years later, I found out that wetting the bed is trauma from the dominant parent. And that was certainly true with my situation. When I got out of there, my whole body, you ever see that show called The Hulk,
Yes.
where the guy gets big and his arms split open and everything? That's exactly how I felt. I felt my whole body change, physically change when I got out of there. That's how much trauma there was in that childhood. I almost didn't make it. I really almost didn't make it. So they were right, these guides, when they come through, that when they tell you things, it's absolutely true. And that's where the journal writing comes in. That's where writing these things down is so important, because years later you look back at what you wrote and go, oh my God, I knew that. I got that information, but I didn't get it. It came through me. It didn't come from me, you know? So I get out of the house at 16. It's like this expansion of my body. That's what it was. That's really what it was. It turns out what I was doing throughout my childhood is I was like this. I was holding myself together, holding my breath. I was, keeping myself, preserving myself, not letting them know me. Although you can't help but them knowing you when you're a little kid growing up, they know who you are, but they didn't really know me. I didn't, I preserved it. When I came out of it, no wonder I felt like my body was splitting open, like I was getting big, expanding, it was traumatic. I mean, I'm telling you, it was amazing. And by the time I was 19 years old, they come to me and they tell me, they go, the guides come through. You've got to be open and ready for anything they're going to tell you, because they tell you good things and that they tell you the truth. I mean, and some people they interpret the truth as bad, and it's not bad. It's just the truth. It's what you need to know. They said, you need to find your own way. Your marriage is not going to work. But at 19 years old, I'm going, oh my God. So I was devastated for about 20 minutes, because my whole life I've gotten this guidance and they always just told me the truth. Okay. And I learned how to handle the truth. I wrote it down, what they were telling me. I comprehended it. I accepted it. I had no one to talk to about my experiences, especially in the 50s, in an unconscious world. I'm telling you, it was unconscious. Okay. So I had really no one to talk to. I had my journal and I had my guides. They would have locked me up, Jeff, if they knew what was really going on in those days, okay? No one understood. So, uh, I was out on my own. I said to my husband, I said, I didn't tell him what they told me. I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I mean, we were both young. He was too young to be married. I mean, it's just the truth. And I said, I want you to, he was a carpenter. I said, I want you to introduce me to the architect that draws the plans that you guys build these houses from. He goes, why? I said, because I want to learn how to do it. He goes, okay. So he takes me there. And the guy's name was Dave Williams, a really super nice guy, way too busy to be bothered with me. But I came in with my home designs. I had drawings of home designs on napkins that I brought in. I said, what do you think of these? He goes, well, I just have to tell you, I don't have time for you. And I said, okay. I said, I appreciate meeting you. I really do appreciate that. And so a couple years went by. We built, we bought our first house when we were 19 years old. I painted it, and my husband brought his, you know, comrades, and they framed it, and that was our down payment, sweat equity. And that was our first brand new home for our little family, you know? And it was right after that that the guides told me that my marriage wasn't going to work out. Okay, so I was in heaven. I mean, this was the best thing ever. And then no more than a year later, my husband, he was working on another project, and come to look at these model homes that they have, that these houses are, maybe we want to move up and buy one of these. And I went out and looked at them, and I said, great, this is a great thing. I like it. And so we went ahead and we did the same sweat equity with this. It was the same builder with nicer homes. And then we rented the house out that we first bought. So in our second home, that was like we were 20, I was like almost 21 at that point. And I said to him, I said, I found a lot that I want to buy and build a house from scratch myself, one that I design, that I build myself. So I want to sell the first house and buy the lot. He goes, okay. Jeff, we were young. We didn't see any limitations. He goes, okay. And he believed in me because he's seen how I worked just as hard as he did at doing this stuff. So I built that spec house, was a real, you know, learning experience. I didn't know what came first. You know what you did? Did the tile come before the paint? Did the painter, I didn't know any of it. And everyone I consulted with, no one knew. They were specialists. He was a framing contractor. The architect was an architect. Nobody knew how everything went together. So I was on my own. I had to learn to do this. I went to that architect and I said, I've got the design here, laid out. Can you help me draw the plans? And he said, because it was a couple years later, he goes, okay. So he took me under his wing. I became a licensed architect in California from him, from working underneath him and drawing and designing and drawing all these houses that I ultimately turned out building. I became a general contractor and a land developer. My life just took off. I mean, everything I learned from following the guidance as a kid, getting this guidance coming through all the time, knowing what to do, when to do it. You know, I mean, here's a funny story. I was in charge of creating the contracts with the general contractors for my husband became a framing contractor, and he worked on big jobs. I mean, there were, like 88 duplexes and 1,000-unit apartment complexes and stuff like that. I'm the one that negotiated the deals with the GCs. And how did I learn all this? I did all this without any formal education. I had no formal education to do any of this. So I don't know. I probably came in with it. But I knew how to negotiate with these guys. My husband had no idea. I mean, he was intimidated by them, but I wasn't. And our payroll each week was about $30,000 in the early 70s. And I said to these general contractors negotiating these bids, I said, we need to get that $30,000 check every week to cover the payroll. None of it's profit, but we have to pay the union, the suppliers and the framers. We have to have that money. There was absolutely zero tolerance. We can't not have it. And this one GC, I went to pick up the check on Friday, and the secretary, headed me off. She goes, he doesn't have the money this week. You're going to have to go without. So I was like dumbfounded. I sat in the chair, and I just sat there and let the guidance come through. And I had it. I said, okay, I know what I'm going to do. I watched the light on her phone. He was on the phone. You could see the secretary's lights on the phone, the old-fashioned phones. And I watched the light go out. And I walked over to his door, opened it, and walked in. She goes, you can't go in there. And I just walked in there and I said, Glenn, I just want you to understand that I know that I understand that you can't pay us this week. I really do. But I don't know about the 30 carpenters that work for us, if they're going to understand. So what I'm going to do, because I knew where he lived, I said, I'm going to have them go to your house tonight and you can explain it to them. And he wrote that check. In other words, I always had a way around things. I had no idea. I never even thought that they wouldn't pay. And of course it would happen, right? You know it's going to happen at some point. But time after time when these things happened, I always came through with the money because I got the guidance as to how to deal with the situation, you know? So I always had this guidance with me, pointing me in the right direction, knowing what to do, when to do it. I knew when someone was lying to me. I knew when something was going to work, when something wasn't going to work. I could feel it. I was just cooking. I was building, a lot of homes, developing land. I was on fire. And I was in a trade where there were no women in the building business in those days. They were secretaries. They weren't out in the field doing what I was doing. But I never really thought about that. I was just doing what I was guided to do. I was having the time of my life. I was having so much fun making a lot of money. It was just a blast. And my husband was making a lot of money being a framer, but he was losing his way. It turns out that he was taking drugs. He said to me, he goes, I don't know where you get all this energy. I can't keep up with you. So he started taking uppers to be able to keep, to stay up with me, to keep up with what his part was in the building business. And I didn't know he was doing this. Turns out he started selling drugs. He became a drug dealer. I mean, we were making so much money. We were doing so well. And he was doing this. When I found out, I was really shocked that he was doing this. But before I knew about that, it was probably, I think I was 26 years old, 26, 27. My guides come through and they tell me real estate's going to crash. Sell everything. Finish your projects. Get out of everything. Sell your rental properties. Sell everything. Get out. It's going to be a heck of a crash, And I mean, we were in a white hot market. It was incredible, Jeff. And I said, "What? It's going to crash." I didn't want to believe it. But about 5 minutes later, I said, "Okay, I know better than to argue with that, with the truth they bring through." So I moved on that. I completely changed my approach to where I was going. I was getting out of everything. I didn't tell anybody what I was doing. But then they started to notice. They go, Linda, we don't, what are you winding down? Where's your next project? I said, there is no next project. And they said, what's going on? And I told them, I said, there's going to be a real estate crash and I'm getting out. I'm selling everything. I'm selling everything. And they said, well, it's going to be you that makes the real estate crash happen. And I just laughed at them. I said, you mean me, one person is going to cause a real estate crash? You've got to be kidding me. I said, you asked me what it was, why I'm doing this, and I told you the truth. People can't mostly handle that truth, right? Especially when things are so hot that you just don't want to see it. You don't want to see it. But this is one of the things about the guides. They tell you the truth. they don't worry about you being able to handle the truth. Of course you can. It's just a matter of, will you? Are you going to stand? The train's coming. Get off the tracks. If you don't want to believe it, just stand there and it'll run over you. That's about what it comes down to. So I was just really a realist. When I got this information and I knew it was coming, I got out. I moved on it. I didn't wait. Like when the guide said your marriage isn't going to work out. And I was guided to go out and see that architect. I was guided to do all this and I moved on it. Was it easy? No, it wasn't easy. I wasn't educated for any of it. I bumped into walls. You know, s- I I learned the hard way through the school of hard knocks. But no, nothing's easy. But it worked out really well because I did follow it, the guidance. Like I had honed as a kid. I honed this as a kid and survived that childhood because of it. So I knew how this worked from my DNA. I knew it. And sure as can be, 3 months before the real estate crash, I got out and I got divorced because he was, way off base all at one time before everything went down. He got arrested. He wound up in prison. And I got out of real estate, had sold everything. I was totally liquid. And everyone I knew that laughed at me, that thought I was crazy, they all lost their mansions, their fake marriages, their everything, it's just all nonsense, really. Um, and so, I got through that and then we got to the end of that and the guides come through. This is real interesting. They come through and they tell me, real estate will never be the same for you again. They said, let me think how they said this. Real estate will never be the same for you again. Um, it was over. And I thought, you mean like, "Ugh, it's over. Real estate's over." They said, no, it's just never going to be the same again. And I said, why? And they said, because you got through your anger issues. And I went, my anger issues? I was angry? And they said, oh, oh, yes. And I was like, wow. I thought I was, you know, an architect, a home builder, a land developer. I identified with all that when really what was going on is I was healing my past by doing all this and working through that. I had all that fight in me. I had all that, you know, might in me. I had all that energy in me. And it was all stemming from the anger that came through from that childhood. So while we think we're doing one thing, something else is really going on. To me, that was shocking. I just went, wow. And I did feel that relief. I did feel like the anger was behind me.
All this time, you've been having communication with your guides. Was all the communication telepathic?
Yes.
So you would say that you are clairaudient and you would just hear them?
Yes.
Do you
I
hear?
it,
What
I
are
would
the,
say knowing and knowing. I knew it.
it was more of a knowing, or you would actually
A
hear
knowing.
voices? A knowing.
No, it was a knowing. And I had always had these conversations going with them through this. It's like it's gonna sound crazy. It's like being two people. They are one with you. See, we all have this going for us. I just got shocked into it at such a young age, okay? That for me to define a difference between me and them, the only way I can define a difference is they tell me something I didn't know
And so you would get these knowings like an aha moment. Like
all the time.
where did that come from? Where did that thought come from?
Right. I knew it wasn't me because I never thought that. I didn't want real estate to be over. So yeah, it comes through as a knowingness. Like the aha moment is a perfect way to put it, Jeff. That's exactly what it feels like.
Well, how do you trust those ideas or that information?
The way I mastered it is writing it down. That's how I mastered it in my childhood. I didn't know. I knew that my environment, I mean, at school, in society, at home, that they were way off base, that it didn't make sense to me. The way that they thought, the way that they taught, it didn't make sense to me because of the way I really learned from my guides. The first chapter in my book is called Raised by Spirit Guides. I mean that. I wasn't raised, I wasn't influenced. I didn't allow myself to be raised or influenced by the people in this world. They were so off base when weighed against the guidance I was always receiving. It was insanity, this life. Crazy. The things that they thought and said it was completely off base. When laid against the intelligence that I received and the timeliness of the guidance I always received. It was impeccable. It has always been impeccable.
You had an NDE, so you had this experience to help connect you with your guides. For those
Right.
who haven't, can they also connect with them?
Yes. And I mean it. I'm going to say this. It's so important. I teach it. In fact, I wrote a companion journal to my book, Guided. It's a journal. It's the format, the formula that I used as a kid, and it works. I survived a horrendous childhood by having this at my disposal, using the journal writing.
Is it kind of like automatic writing?
It turns into it. Yes, it does, Jeff. Absolutely. Because what's happening is you're having this conversation. It starts out as a conversation with yourself. Okay. When I was a little kid, I'd get in the sandbox before I started using doing the writing. I was only 2, 3 years old. And I'd sit in the sandbox and I'd cry and I'd talk and I'd play in their presence. I knew they were with me about what was going on. I was having this conversation with them. I never see a lot of people. What happens is most people, they're ridiculed for having this relationship, this, these unseen friends or whatever people want to call them, but they're real. It's all real until you start to doubt that it's real from those who influence you. In my case, I never, ever let anyone catch me talking to them. Never. From that 20-month-old experience, I knew what where the line was. And I said, I will never trust them with any of this. Never. Because this is my glue. This is the only thing that keeps me in touch with myself and on it, on it, on it. I never miss it.
You got this information from the guides like downloads, but at some
Right.
but at some point in your life you developed this tool to help you, which we see on the table in front of you. Why do you need the tool?
Well, it's not that I needed it. They said to me, they came to me. Okay, I gotta just, okay, I'm gonna pick up where I left off at like 28 years old when they told me that real estate will never be the same. I started taking dream classes when I was 35 years old, like 6 years later. I had this dream, Jeff, for the first 35 years of my life that never changed or stopped. I had it at least one time every night. I had it so many times. And in this dream, they showed me a world to come, is what they showed me. And I didn't really understand the dream like I needed to. But when I started going to these dream classes, I started to understand my dreams and this primary dream that would not leave me alone. When I started taking those dream classes, that dream stopped. I've never had it again because what it did is it moved me in the right direction where they wanted me to go, where they wanted me to start really tuning in to what this all is instead of just using it for my own gain. That's what I did with it. Okay, when I got out of that house and I got pregnant on purpose and I got out of the trauma and I became an instant success. I mean, I was on fire. In fact, my family, they stood back and they were insulted by my successes because they did not raise me. They thought they raised me, but they didn't to be a success. They raised me to be a failure, which I never bought into. They would say things to me like, "Linda, you don't get it." Throughout my childhood, I'd hear it from kids in school and everything. And I go, "I don't get it. What don't I get?" Yeah, I mean, I just didn't jibe with what was going on around me. It didn't make sense to me because of the other world I was always living in. I was living in two worlds. They were living in one. Okay. My reality was so different from everyone else's. So he- when I started taking these dream classes, I started writing everything down again, my dreams, writing all my dreams down, figuring out what they meant. I mean, really, really, really diving into it. This journal writing is the way that I help people learn to have this conversation with themselves first, because that's where it starts when they're little kids. I remember. And then the conversation becomes more sophisticated as you start to have this blend, this blend.
What was the dream that you had over and over?
It was the merry-go-round dream. It's chapter one of Guided. Uh, the merry-go-round dream. It was, I'm on this merry-go-round and at the top, it's like I'm about 75 to 100 feet off the ground, off the floor, inside it must have been some kind of a cathedral, and it was a dome ceiling with rich architectural, you know, carvings and drawings and beautiful architectural masterpiece, all real innate paintings and stuff. And this merry-go-round was anchored right in the center of it as it was spinning around. And I'm on my horse and I'm holding on, and everyone I know in the whole wide world is on this merry-go-round with me. It is the best feeling. I love all these people. So I'm really young. I'm about 7 years old on this merry-go-round. And then the merry-go-round starts to speed up and it's going faster and fast. And at first I was holding on like this, and as it's going faster, I hold on with one arm and I'm leaning back and I'm just going, yes, this is the best, the most fun ever. This is the height of my life. As everyone else starts to get scared, scream, and let go. And they hit the sidewalls and blood flying everywhere as they scream to their deaths. I'm going, oh my God, they got this all wrong. They got it all wrong. This is the best time in our life. What's going on here? I couldn't believe what I was seeing when it was just getting to be incredible. So, this merry-go-round dream, it showed me what they showed me is that people will be living in so much fear that they won't see the opportunity. As things speed up in our world, they're going to get fearful and they're going to miss it. They're going to miss they're going to go into fear and it's just going to consume them. And what blood means in a dream, when you lose blood, it means you lose your energy. So in the world as we have it right now, where we are, this whole book, this whole experience has been so prophetic about what's coming, what's going on, what's really happening, not what you think is happening, but what people think is happening is what they've been um convinced. by outside influences is happening?
Well, that's a great question. What is happening and what's coming?
Each day we see you becoming more scared. You will not find yourself this way because you did not plan this. A time is coming when you will be aware and no longer fearful. That's them talking to us.
You are moving your hands incredibly fast. How are you able to decipher what's being told?
It moves a lot faster than this, Jeff. Okay, you know how you mentioned the downloads, like downloads,
Mhm.
information just comes through. I mean, I can see what they're doing. I mean, I'm going to explain this, okay? Dreams. We got to the part where dream classes, that dream finally ended. I was moving the way I was meant to move through this life at that time in my life. Okay, so I got on the path. That's what the guides call it. You're on the path now, Linda. That was 1985 when I started dream classes. 1988, Christmas time. My dream teacher, I find out that she, with her friend, is using a Ouija board. And I didn't find this out until they invited me over. And the way that happened is the story of all this is on my website, channeledreadings.com, where it talks about the story of Ask the Universal Channel, how it came about. But in short, uh, my guides came through one of their sessions and said, "We need you to have Linda in on a session." And they said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, we will." So a couple weeks go by, and their guides come back through and say, we need you to. It's important. You need to have Linda in on a session. We have something to tell her." And they said, "Yeah, yeah, we'll get around to that." So the third time, their guides come through and said, "You will no longer have access to us until you have Linda in on a session." And they couldn't reach their guides anymore. That's funny. So reluctantly, they had me in on a session. I wasn't real chummy with my dream teacher, but she was a fabulous dream teacher. So I went there because I learned so much from her, Jeff. It was really good. I've learned to deal with difficult people throughout my life. So she was like, whipped cream. I mean, she was no sweat for me. I got what I came there for. All right. So they had me over, tossed a pad of paper at me and a pen, and they just said, "Start writing." I'd never seen anything like it before. I'd never seen anyone do any of this. And the information just started coming through, and I was writing it out. And the guides came through and told me about certain things that were going to happen. I guess they wanted to make they wanted to prove that they were my guides, that they were for real. All right. Because I had never communicated with them like this before. And they told me a few things. They said there's going to be an earthquake in in Oakland, and it was going to cause the coffer dams at Folsom Lake. I lived in Sacramento at the time, to fail, and that all kinds of things. And they'd have to, drain the lake, and they'd have to rebuild the coffer dams, and they explained all kinds of things. There's this earthquake was going to be terrible. A lot of people were going to die in it. And they told me just all kinds of things about what was going to happen going forward. I have it all. It's all in my book, and to remember everything, to go through all the details. But they said to me, they said, "We need you We're asking you if you would be willing to help us with something. We need to create a talking board, them, with me, that doesn't cause fear and caution. We need you to do this with us. And we're going to come through your dreams and we're going to show you what we want this to look like, what we want this to work like. It turns out that I'll just grab this pendulum here. With the pendulum, they wanted this to be universal. They wanted it to be conducive with using a pendulum. Like it's really easy to use this if you were to use this on a great big Ouija board or other ones, it's not tight. It doesn't work universally like with the pendulum. Okay, and I could use it with the pendulum. Like it always works with the pendulum. Okay, go to the center, please. Center. And we're one. We're one with each other. And I could use it. But the planchette, the speller that comes with it, it's faster for me. And I learned with this. Most people learn with the pendulum when they use this talking board. But they asked me to create this. They said, we need a way to communicate with people and help them through the difficult times to come. And I said, oh my God, yes, I will do this. I mean, I was an architect. I had the ability to do it. I had the business acumen. I knew how to produce it and put it out there. I mean, they came to the right person to do it. And I love them. And I have these dreams where they come through all the time and I always have this contact with me. So yeah, why wouldn't I do it? I had this done and completely designed, produced, and manufactured. I had it completely finished by August of the following year. And that's why it's here. It's 35 years old. This was finished in 1989 and it's 2024. So this is 35 years old now. And people love it. People use it. What I suggest is they use the journal first. They start with the journal so they can begin to have this conversation with themselves first on the pages and break through that crust, that separation between them and their guidance. And what happens is they start to review what they wrote a week later, a month later, and they see what they're writing and they go, well, I don't remember writing that, because they didn't. The guides begin to infiltrate your writing and it becomes, like you said, automatic writing. Once they can break through that and they start to have this conversation, two worlds, with their guides through their journal writing, then they're ready to start to master this. And this becomes easy for them to do.
It sounded like that their message was that we're living in fear and what's to come is not to live in fear.
Right.
Basically.
Right.
Are there any other messages about the future from them?
Yet awakened by the remnant of fear that remains. Do you understand what they just said?
Get awakened by the remnant, the leftover fear that's left.
I'm going to take it to the next level because it's deep. Okay. When I'm going to go back to that early time when I got shocked back into this life, when I was so fearful of my mom that she blew me back into this life by dumping ice cold water on me. And the fear that shocked me, it was horrible. That fear caused me to take a critical step, and that was to ask. That is critical. The first thing that happens when you have fear is to ask for help. Ask for help. Okay, when you're writing in your journal, you are having this conversation, even if you don't realize it. And it is a plea for help. It is a way of asking for help. It's a way to understand yourself. It's a way to get over what's traumatizing you. It's a way to understand what to do next. Get me out of this trap, this dilemma, this, this quicksand. Get me out of this. Get me out. So that's what the journal writing does. And then you have a breakthrough where you start having this conversation without even knowing it's. Many people don't even realize it's happening until they review what they wrote a week later, a month later, and they go, oh, I see now. I feel it now.
Why do we all have so much fear?
It starts when we're small. When in the journal, I just can't help but say this. The first chapter in the journal of part 2 is fear. The second chapter is ask. It's asking that gets us out of that fear. But what happens, we come into this life, Jeff, we come in open, 100% open. And then this life, bam! And that first fear shuts you down. You don't even remember what that was, but it shut you down. And everyone, based on their previous lifetimes and, all their experiences, they react in a different way, but unanimously, fear is the first one that shows up and takes you down. That's where it all started.
Why do you think we keep returning to this place over and over again that is full of fear and trauma?
Think of fear as a rock, a boulder, density, thickness, stuckness. We come here to get unstuck. We come here because that's what happened to me at 20 months old. I was stuck. And when I asked for help out loud for someone to help, I didn't know who I was asking. And they all showed up and communicated with me in a way that I was one with. I understood. At 20 months old, I didn't have reasoning yet, Jeff, but I understood the telepathic communication that was coming through from them to me with ease. I understood that. So what happens is the merry-go-round dream, everyone went into fear and let go and died and screamed in terror to their deaths. Oh my God, we come here to heal. And so many people have uh they abide by this fear unanimously. I mean, I could bring up so many things, but I don't need to. Everybody knows that there's been a tremendous amount of fear on the planet. And it's in the dream, it killed these people. It's killing you. It's killing your spirit. It's killing the reason you came here, what you came here to do. It's just annihilating it. And we have to wake up from the fear. This guidance is here to help us do that. It sees the problem. So as I move through my life, I teach people how to do this. I mean, I started teaching people how to use this. And this is really amazing. I started teaching people, I had this done in 1990. I started doing classes down in Phoenix. I lived in Sedona. I moved to Sedona from Sacramento, California in 1989 and moved to Sedona thinking, this would be a good place to launch this. And it turned out that Phoenix was a better place to go to teach people. And I started putting out classes and I filled the classes every time. And the people in the class would just fall in love with me. I was like, I didn't expect that. I mean, they were all just like, and I had to explain to them what you were feeling, the connection that you just made is to your guidance. You're using me like I'm like the persona. I'm something physically there, so you're attaching that feeling to me, but it's really coming through you, from your guides. This is what it brings through. And I teach the classes, and they were like awakened.
What you have is similar to a Ouija board. And a lot of people are really freaked out about Ouija boards and feel
Right.
like you're opening yourself up to demons and portals and who knows what. How is this different?
Well, they came through and told me they needed a talking board that didn't cause fear and caution. This is not my design. This is theirs. I just followed instruction. And with my technical skills, this is hand drawn, by the way, and drew this, okay? Um, and started using this. Everyone that was using the Ouija board at that time that I was, because that's how I first bumped into it, is them having me over. They all abandoned their Ouija boards and started using this all the time. This is all they used. Um, but how's it different? It doesn't cause fear and caution. It's used intelligently. In fact, the guides told me, they said, when you create this, when we're done with this, we need you to have instructions on how to use this the right way. And I have on the channel readings website with these, I have the 4-week email course that teaches them how to do it. And it's really detailed. And then I have the 2-day workshops I do on the weekends that if they want to come, and physically learn how to do it with me present, they can learn to do it like that. So I have honored everything that the guides told me to do. The Ouija board, they sell it in a toy store, Jeff. They get a hold of it, they're haphazard with it. They've got no idea. They think it's a joke. And then they bump into these things because it's probably mostly the sleepovers. The kids have the sleepovers and they scare themselves. Well, yeah, you're still young and pliable, and you actually are making contact with something beyond this world, but because you're already approaching it from some scary movie you watched, from some dark type of relationship you have with what happened to someone else that said, oh, and they've got all these scary things. Hollywood has really done a number on people trusting themselves and using their natural abilities to have this contact. That has really messed things up. So, I don't know. There's so much like that this is why the guides wanted this. They wanted it. They designed it. They asked me to be you know, the creator of it. I mean, they had to have someone on the planet that was here to do it, to bring it into our reality. And, and something that didn't cause fear and caution. There's nothing on it that it's almost like a classroom looking type thing. It's got no suggestions on it at all. So it's a clean slate is what it is. And it's portable. I actually, this talking board, I created it in the official, professional board, which is what I use, and the printable one, and the online one where you can use your mouse.
Do you think it's possible that ultimately your body is the talking board or the Ouija board? And eventually you won't need that, or people won't need that once they learn to communicate with their guides?
Absolutely right. In fact, I call this the training wheels to learn to make the connection to your guides. But the first thing I suggest is start learning to use the journal. The journal comes first because that's where you start to build this energy. You're building energy when you start to do this work. You're building energy. And then when you start, when you have harnessed how this works, not just being in this world, but being in this other subtle world, the one you came from, the one you return to when you're done here. That's how we learn how to harness and hone this uh subtle but powerful connection. One thing I always say that when guidance comes through, it's never loud. So if you hear something loud, that's not guidance. That's the first indication that it's not what you're getting is not guidance. It's coming from some distortion, but it is not guidance because guidance never shouts at you. And when you write in your journal, it's quiet. When you work with your guides like this, it's quiet. Before you enter the session, you breathe, you get quiet, remove the noise and the nonsense from your mind.
How often do you use your own board?
Every
Daily?
day, every day, every day. And here's my ritual. I always tell people uh, the most pleasant time to write in your journal is before you go to bed. And in your journal, what you start writing down what was unusual and out of the ordinary that day. Write it down and date it. And before people know it, they meet, I say 15 minutes a day. They're doing it for an hour. They're like, wow, I remember what happened today. And then this happened. And that caused that to happen. And then that happened. And they start to, wow, there's a lot happening that I usually would just blow off and not really think about it too much. But how critical it is once you start to review what you wrote in your journal and go, well, it's like a daisy chain. You start putting your life back together again and see what was really going on while you were living it. When that amount of clarity and consciousness starts to become normal for you, now you're living in two worlds. You're not just stuck in this one. When that happens, Jeff, then this can happen in the most responsible way.
Linda, after watching this podcast, people may have questions. Are you open to them? And if so, how can they reach you?
Okay, go to my website, Linda Deir, there's my name right there, lindadeir.com. And to see, just to get to the short of it, all the things that I offer, click on shop on the navigation and you'll see where you can check this out. You'll see the books, you'll see my coaching. I have coaching and training and the dreams. I do dream work. I help people understand their dreams. Just everything's right. And the webinars I do, just everything's right there. You can go through it. And of course, the guided journey is a part of the website. It's at the top of every page and post of my website. It's called Guided Journey. Start here. The guided journey took me 8 years to build out, Jeff. And it's got over 60,000 social shares now. And it's free to everyone. And what it is, it's a you go there and you click on it, it toggles. It's your personal life, your professional life, or your personal life. You click on either one and it opens up all these options. You just click on the one that you're drawn to, and you go and it takes you on your journey on your own yellow brick road. And in it is the where at the top, three little bullets that give you an overview of what that post is about. Then underneath that is a video that I do that I talk about that session. And underneath that is all the guidance that came from the guides in italics. And under that is where I end it with how it works, how I summarize the entire post. And where it says right above that is call to action. Then there's a link there that says start your self-examination. And it's part 3 of the journal where they put in their journal entries and they can do it right there online. And that's free too. There's so many free things on my website that it's mind-blowing. And then there's healings with Linda. And I've done those every week. There's so much there, you guys, that's free. And it's from the guides, helping you understand yourself, and get over the fear that has controlled you, even if you may not realize it's there. I have a professor. There's a guy, he's a professor in Michigan. He sent me an email. He goes, I send my students to your guided journey. He goes, it's so well done. It's so intelligent. A professor does. I mean, it's great. This guided journey is really, really powerful. It gets you going in the right direction. And it covers these things to help you learn how to use these things as well.
Linda, before we wrap it up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
Yes, never give up. No matter what's going on, as you get closer to that feeling where you might feel like I did when I was 20 months old, never give up, because at that moment, that's when you're the most tender and the most open.
Linda, thank you for your message and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you, Jeff. It was my pleasure.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.